The President George Bush Turnpike is the eventual toll road that would come from the failed Loop 9. Being in the planning stage since the early 60s, this highway would have become the fourth loop around the city of Dallas, with the other three being Loop 12, I-635, which also includes I-20 between the I-20 I-635 interchange and the I-35 I-20 interchange. And then the third loop would have been Belt Road. With stuff that's gone on, there's a lot of history behind this, so this is one of those things that I know a decent amount of. What's going on, everyone? My name's Cool Titanium 68, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about both Loop 9 and what eventually came of the George Bush Turnpike, and actually both of their futures. Now, before we begin, I want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas. This video was recorded on Christmas Eve, hence we've got the Christmas-themed pajamas, and I've got some of my other Christmas presents that I've already gone to open up behind me. Now, I wanted to work on this earlier just because I know I'm going to have a busy week for the next several, like starting I think later this week with my mom going into surgery on the 27th. So, but honestly, due to sheer procrastination and then focusing on just getting all my Christmas shopping done, we're here now, recording on Christmas Eve. Let's begin. Now, starting off with where we're coming from. So, in the early 60s, the cities in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex came together to create an agency known as the North Texas Council of Governments. What they do is they basically a whole group for, North Central Texas. It's now North Central Texas. So it's called the North Central Texas Council of Governments. And what they do is every 5 years, they'll come together to make a plan to predict traffic for the next 25 years. So, for example, next year we will see the Mobility 2050, which will show plans for 2050 and what we should expect. Now, at this time, their main focus was the publishing of the area's first ever transportation plan. And their first transportation plan, the Total Transportation Plan for the North Central Texas region for 1990, that's the full name, there were plans to build an even larger loop around Dallas that would have been named Loop 9. Now, in Dallas, there are 3 loops. And it's basically the inner loop is Loop 12, then the outer loop is 635/I-20, and then the loop outside of that is Beltline. Now, out of those 3, only one of them is a full-fledged highway. Loop 12 is technically designated as a highway, but it acts kind of like what State Highway 289 is, pretty much north from Dallas northward. There's so much development on it that they can't really build it up into a full-fledged highway. And then Beltline Road is just Beltline Road. It's a normal 4 to 6 lane road that you can travel on. But it would have been interesting because in that 1990 thing, and actually before we actually go into maybe some of the more nitty-gritty, one interesting thing that I did want to talk about is that State Highway 161 was not originally supposed to be a part of Loop 9. So what would have happened is, from here, Loop 9 would have gone directly west to connect up to what is now State Highway 121. And that's interesting because State Highway 161 is basically from 114 all the way down to about 183. This was the original portion of 161, and again, we'll talk about that because it'll come up later as we start talking about this. Now, in the late 60s, there were 2 sections that had been built for Loop 9 before they were canceled. Now, the first section, again, is Texas State Highway 190. Now, this is if you guys don't know where 190 is basically from George Bush starting at I-35 and ending right around here. because what this would have followed what was now present-day Trinity Mills. But what happened is that, well, when they stopped, they pretty much just built that, and they built it up to here. And if I can probably find a much older picture, like maybe from 1995, so I can see they were trying to build something. Now, this is not a great representation because in 2001 they were building that out, but they don't really have good pictures from 1985. But pretty much, Trinity Mills was supposed to have been like the next highway for Loop 9. And again, this is 85, so I can't go that... I mean, this is 95, but 85 doesn't really show much of anything just because this was 1985. They didn't really have that clear of radar imagery. Now, the second section was actually from was known as Texas State Highway 161, which is present-day George Bush between State Highways 183 and 114. So, 161 present day. Let me get back on here and zoom out. So, this is 114 here. So, pretty much on the very southeast side of DFW Airport, up to about here, it was the original version of of State Highway 161. And as you can see, they built a pretty big amount of that too. I mean, it stopped right here, but there was a decent amount of that highway that was built. Even in 85, it wasn't really built that much, but at that point, it was like, okay, well, there's some highway there. So, it's pretty good. Now, why did Loop 9 get canceled? The main reason is actually because of Richardson. So, on the original plans, and I'll probably see if I can zoom back in towards Richardson. So, in the original plans, wait, where's Campbell Road here? Yeah, Campbell Road. Okay. So, in the original plans for Loop 9, it was supposed to follow what is present-day Campbell Road. Like this would have, so y'all can probably see, if I zoom out, I mean, yes, it does go through portions of North Dallas. And it probably would have came down here, going through these, and connected back here. But the thing is once you hit Coit, this is all Richardson. And if you're going to follow Coit, you're going to follow Campbell Road, let me zoom out here. This right here is Campbell Road. So, all of this area would have been cut off again from Richardson. Now, Central Expressway had already gone through the city of Richardson, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, not another highway that's gonna go through our thing." So, the city of Richardson lobbied heavily against the creation of this highway, which is why it got canceled. Now, I'm gonna tell you this right now. I'm not gonna say Richardson is bad. I grew up in Richardson myself. There's a lot of good things about Richardson. I do believe that them not going through with building Loop 9 initially was a pretty good idea. Again, Richardson at the time was split in half with the extension of Central Expressway. Loop 9's northern route would have ran through Richardson, where Campbell Road is today. And again, pretty much everything from like where George Bush Turnpike is now to Campbell Road would have all been cut off. So it was not something that they wanted to do. However, in the late 80s, when the Texas Turnpike Authority was thinking about possibly building a new toll road called George Bush Turnpike, one of the first sections of this highway was actually like the northern section. So right between the tollway and 75, which is where I believe, which is like the northernmost portion of this thing. Now, what they did is representatives from Richardson, in conjunction with the city of Dallas, and again, the Texas Turnpike Authority, they went up to the city of Plano to have discussions about building this toll road that would build upon what Loop 9 was. What they agreed on is that the new toll road would actually sit on a 300-foot right-of-way that would be split between the city of Plano to the north and to the cities of Dallas and Richardson to the south. And if you guys have ever watched my Katie Jackson video, I kind of did explain that when I made it up to the George Bush Turnpike Bridge, where the westbound section of George Bush between 75, like pretty much at that point, was the city of Plano, and eastbound was Dallas and Richardson. Now, construction of the new service roads began in 1988 through North Garland and Richardson. Even though the first sections of George Bush Turnpike wouldn't open for another 10 years, 2 large interchanges were built in anticipation for this toll road. The first was the interchange at 75 that was built in 1990. Now, as I've said before, this interchange would become what's known as a white elephant and would sit abandoned for several years because of how long it took to build the turnpike to that point. Now, the second interchange that was built was the Dallas North Tollway that was built in 94. Now, and I actually do remember my parents talking to me about while they were building that up. And yeah, I can attest to that. If you've ever been to Dallas, you guys have probably seen just how massive that interchange is. If I can get a good picture, get a good thing of it. So, this is what 75 looks like today. It's a 4-level interchange. The first level is US 75 with the Central Expressway as the frontage roads. Then you've got one set of connector ramps going over, second set of connector ramps, and then 75, and then George Bush itself is the highest. So unlike, let's say, the High 5 interchange, where the first is 635, the second layer is all the frontage roads, and then the third level is 635 before you have levels 4 and 5 with all the connectors. The bottom level 75, bottom level 75, and the very top one is George Bush Turnpike. Now, the first segment that was built, again, was the northernmost segment through North Dallas. As stated before, Loop Line's original path was going to be along present-day Campbell Road. But George Bush Turnpike was actually located about 2 miles north of its original proposed interchange at D&T and present-day Trinity Mills Parkway. This opened in 1998, which included the turnpike between Midway Road and Preston. So what they did is, and let me try and get back on the Google Maps, on Google Earth here. So the first thing that they built, and I could probably find, okay, that's 2001. So what they did is that they built basically the George Bush Turnpike and D&T interchange here, and they stopped, and they would go here, and this would be the first section that was built. And that would open in December of 1998. A year later, the second section of Segment 1 extended to the Turnpike east to Campbell Road. Or the northern section of Segment 1 extended the Turnpike east to Campbell Road, finally utilizing the 75 interchange. The next 2 segments quickly opened after Segment 1's opening. Now, Segment 2 would open in 2000, and this one would extend George Bush basically all the way to State Highway 78. So, as a bit of a visual, this is Campbell Road right here. So, when they extended over 75 and came to here, this is where Segment 1 ends. Now, Segment 2 takes you all the way down from Campbell and ends right here at US Highway 70. At State Highway 78. And then I believe Segment 3 opened in July 2001 and actually went over on the west side. And what that did is it extended the Turnpike to what would be 35. And this is what it looks like in February of 2001. They had just completed the Turnpike pretty much from here all the way up to just before Trinity Mills. And then they were building all of the stuff basically in between Trinity Mills now as the frontage road to I-35. That segment would open up again 3 months. Actually, I think it was 3 months later after that snapshot was changed. So that would actually connect the original section of Loop 9 that became State Highway 190. Now, segment 4, also known as the George Bush Turnpike Super Connector, took a much longer time to build. This segment brought the turnpike south past I-35 and would connect it to 635's extension to State Highway 121, just north of DFW Airport. Let me see here. Wait, let me make sure of this. Okay. Sorry, I completely read that wrong. So, segment 4, what they did is they took George Bush Turnpike and they would extend it to here. Now, mind you, this is all State Highway 161 leading up to State Highway 183. I wouldn't be surprised if they were still working on this, but this was all State Highway 161, and this would have been one of the first things. But what they did, and as we go closer, they would connect this up. This is known as the PGBT connector, because even though this was a 5.2 mile stretch of road, it costed about $340 million. And the reason for that, and let me actually show this back on there. A lot of this sits on the Trinity River floodplain. I mean, look, this is McKinnish. I've worked here. This is Ari Good, and these are a bunch of warehouses. But what is this? This is the East Fork Trinity River right here. That leads directly south to the Trinity River itself. So with it having to sit on a lot of the waterway, it's pretty much an elevated bridge and sits on a lot of stilts through that section. Now, construction on this segment started in January of 2003, but wasn't completed until about October of 2005. Now, segment 5, coincidentally, was actually the same set, being worked at the same time as segment 4 is being worked on. Now, what this is, and I could probably show y'all here. So, segment 5 was basically taking State Highway 161 and State Highway 161 here, because this is kind of where it stopped, and they just extended it northward up to 635. They built the bridge over 114, and they tried to build it up to 635 so that they could have one of the few toll booths on 161. Now, this segment started, again, as an extension from the 635's airport extension that opened in December of 2001. The section of this segment, in my opinion, is one of the bumpiest roads in the DFW area, but again, there's a good reason for that. While they were building this section, they recognized that unstable clay was a really big problem here, meaning like it shifted a lot around. So what they did is they had to bring in contractors that would use concentrated liquid stabilizers as well geosynthetic reinforcements. It's probably going to be a little bit more expensive, but it's still a pretty rough road at that point. Now, when segment 4 was completed, they were able to connect both original portions of Loop 9 for the first time ever. And when segment 4 was completed, George Bush was extended south to State Highway 183 to Confluence Road, which opened in 2006. I think before we start talking about segment 6, I should give a brief explanation as to bumpy and rough roads. I would say rough road is basically one that is, well, rough. Like, it's not really that well maintained. There's potholes everywhere, and then some pretty big divots in those roads, as well as an inconsistent road surface. When I talk about a bumpy road, like, George Bush Turnpike is still relatively smooth. There's just a lot of bumps. So it's not flat like what most highways are. It's like you'll go up and down and up and down. Like, you can really feel it in your suspension. And then you're just like, okay, well, it's very bumpy. It's very bumpy, but it's not rough. Now, back to President George Bush Turnpike. We have another section called Segment 6, and this is basically the western extension. What this did is, starting off at the 183 George Bush Turnpike interchange, this extended it farther south. So you can see, took it south and it took this farther south, and it brought it all the way down to I-20. Now, this was eventually not extended farther south of I-20 because of just how much development's gone on here. Would it have been smart? Maybe, but I think just because of how much stuff is on here, I don't think they would really want to do that. Because it kind of connects up to Beltline Road over here, so it's not really that big of a deal to really extend it past I-20. But this segment was being worked on in conjunction with what's known as Segment 7, which is actually the eastern section that we'll talk about in a little bit. Now, this was actually split up into two sections. The first section opened in August of 2009 and extended the western section south to I-30. So, since you started here, what they had to do is they also had to build a huge interchange at I-30. So they said, all right, well, let's just open up the portion of I-30, which opened up in, what was it? In August of 2009. They then made the second section, which extended down to I-20, which opened about 3 years later in October of 2012. Now, Segment 7 is what's known as the Eastern Connector. And let me actually move over to that side to show you what that is. Now, the Eastern Connector basically extends from State Highway 78, and it goes all the way east and south. And what it does is kind of follows here. I don't remember if they actually tore out that target. I don't think they did. No, they just took out some of the, some of the stuff there. And it would extend it right to about, I believe it's right here is where they end up. Okay, a little bit farther west. So right about here. Let me get back over here. So this connected basically the cities of Garland, Saxe, and Rowlett with the rest of George Bush Turnpike. With construction beginning in October of 2008, this section is George Bush Turnpike's most expensive extension currently at just over $1 billion. Part of this is due to the over 1 mile bridge that goes directly over Lake Ray Hubbard just before the I-30 interchange. So this bridge had to be completely built. Unlike, let's say, I-30 here, where there are some, like, quote-unquote islands that come together so you don't have to build out a really, really long bridge. They had to do that with George Bush at that time. So it was a little bit expensive for that. With how expensive this extension was, the Eastern Connector did open in 2011. And with that, there were some other smaller projects with George Bush that did go on. In 2009, George Bush was actually one of the first toll roads in the U.S. that transitioned to a fully cashless toll system. I believe the other one was the toll road around Denver. I don't remember the exact name of it, but I just remember that. A couple years ago, the North Texas Tollway Authority finished a road-wide, pretty much almost an entire corridor-wide project, expanding George Bush Turnpike from I-20 on the very western side all the way north to State Highway 78 in Garland. Again, not much has happened on the eastern corridor in terms of expansion due to that area still not being as highly populated as the very northern and western sections of that. Now, the next one we're going to talk about is what's known as the Eastern, I believe it's the Eastern Extension. Yeah, the East Branch. So, what the East Branch is it is a new extension from I-30 next to Ray Hubbard in, I believe that is Rowlett, and it would extend that all the way south towards I-20. Now, why is this such a big deal? The reason is because, and we'll talk about this later, is because this is a very, very, how do I want to say this? This is a big project because, especially, let's say, if I want to look at where it is now, I mean, look, this is 2013. In 2024, they did build a bunch of apartments here, so these are all still like relatively new, like within like the past like 5 or 10 years. And a bunch of these houses are going to be torn down too. But why is this such a big deal? Because what they're going to do is it's pretty much going to hug Ray Hubbard to a point going all the way down. And it's going to end up right around here. It's going to go around the east side of Mesquite Municipal. And then the big question is going to be, where is this going to end? Is it going to be closer to here in Lawson, or is it going to be out here? And the reason for that is because of when we'll talk about Loop 9. Now, so for this project, there are currently 2 alternatives. And there's alternative 1 and alternative 2. So alternative 1, what this does is it kind of stays a little bit farther to the west, kind of trying to stay outside of this stuff. And again, this is pretty much what it's been like since. There's been a lot of public involvement going on with this. But in 1989, this route study was supposed to have been a lot more. Now again, this portion here doesn't really matter. What matters is here. And as we kind of go up, I mean, these have been like some of the more recent stuff from the East Branch project. I mean, that's a lot of stuff, and then it kind of just narrowed down a little bit. But let's see if I can find like a better picture of it on here. I don't think I'd be able to really that well. But yeah, so why they're doing this is because this is going to plan to be bridged up with Loop 9. And eventually, I know Loop 9 has been built pretty much from I-45 to 35, and they're currently working on 35 to 67. But sooner or later, they're going to start work on 45 going up to I-20. And I would not be surprised if we ever see Loop 9 get proposed as like the next expansion for George Bush Turnpike that would lead directly to 67, which would almost be a full loop around DFW if I'm not mistaken. It's just then they'd have to figure out a way to extend this south and connect it back up. It's something that we don't know, but this is kind of where it's at right now. So this is the notice of intent. This is where the most recent one came out in summer. They're currently going to be doing some technical analysis and field work. By winter of by this time next year, we could see, there will be a public meeting, but in the fall, we might get to see the draft environmental impact statements, and then they'll present preferred alternatives for that public hearing in the winter. And again, in summer 25, there's going to be some schematic design, and at that point, we should be finalizing the that environmental impact statement. Now, of course, we're not going to be able to see there's no way that we're not going to see a finding of no significant impact, because let me actually get out of here. Again, number one, you got to take out all of these, and then it's going to follow like pretty close to floodplains for both Rowlett Creek and, well, not for Rowlett Creek, for Ray Hubbard. And it's going to kind of come around here, it's going to stay to the east side. The upside is it might start to bring in a lot more traffic to this east side, but then the bigger question is going to be, and this is kind of what their big alternative question is do they cut through these trees here? Do they cut through the Trinity Forest and connect back up to I-20? Or do they follow Lawson and then come around this recycling and waste plant facility and come here? That's going to be the big question, because this is going to be cutting through a lot of trees and could be a significant impact for some of that stuff. But again, yeah, so let's see. I don't think there'd be anything new here. Let's see. Let me move that back up here. So alternative one was kind of brought to you by Sunnyvale. So again, the big questions are going to be basically right just northeast of Mesquite Metro coming down, and this section here. But the thing is, with this one was actually brought up by the town of Sunnyvale. And this would include a below-grade section within Sunnyvale and then a bridge section within the East Fork Trinity River floodplain through Mesquite. So I believe this would all be bridged because this is still technically part of the Trinity River floodplain. But this would be... but this stuff would be below grade. And then alternative 2 would actually bring this a little bit farther closer to the bridge. But I don't remember if this would be... This might still be at grade, but it'll follow Lawson Road coming up to here. And what this will do is this is going to be pretty much a typical at grade. Right away is going to be right around 400 feet. You're going to have it's going to be a 6-lane highway with 10-foot shoulders on each side with space in the middle, varying at what'll happen. And then with frontage roads, it'll vary on the outer edges, but you're going to have a 12-foot inner lane and a 14 outer foot lane with a 2-foot thing in between. Now, when it comes to what Sunnyvale would be like, again, you're going to have about, you're going to have clearance here, but you're going to have a 10-foot lane and then 13 feet between the barricades. And you'll keep all that, nothing much to it. And then for bridge sections, again, this is going to go over. You get the typical NTTA design stuff here, just like that. And then at Lawson Road, there's actually a plan to go at grade 2, like above grade 2, kind of like that. But that's pretty much from that one. The next one is actually Loop 9. And here, this one's actually been split up into 3 separate sections. So, we've got Segment A. And this one's actually the one that I believe has started construction recently. So, this basically this one's the one from 67 to 35, to just west of 35. Yep, so as of right now on the February photo, it has not started yet. But I think it will start. I think it did start recently from what I remember reading, right? But then segment 2 is from 35 to 45, which has been built. The 2-lane road has been built, so nothing wrong with that. But then segment C is going to be from 45 all the way up to I-20, where it'll meet up there. And again, there's not much really to it going on right now. I believe segment A, there's still a lot going on. I don't remember if they have completely finished it, but they did publish a final environmental impact statement and then their record of decision. I believe this came out about 2-3 years ago, maybe a year ago. I don't exactly remember when it came out, but this was one of the things where I was like, okay, there's not much to it. Yeah, so environmental impact statements published September of 23, so yeah, just over a year ago. And this is for both of them. They've pretty much gotten like what they're gonna do. So with that, they're gonna take probably the next year before they'll actually start construction. But it is gonna be built on 3 phases for segment A. So phase 1 is to build a 2-way frontage road while they're purchasing the rest of the right-of-way for the ultimate facility. Then phase 2 will be constructing 3-lane frontage road, constructing a 3-lane frontage road in each direction, which will include to that and yada yada yada. And then ultimately they'll build it out to that access controlled freeway in the future. And I believe they've already finished up phase 1 for segment A. I don't remember if they've done how much they've done with segment B. But pretty much, if I remember right, this is going to be that's kind of what it looks like right now. And this was most recently published in 2018, so that's not a very current map. But this one's actually split up into in the 3 stages. So the second one is to build a second 2-lane frontage road in one direction, and then they'll build out a third lane in each direction for phase 3. And then they'll ultimately build the access controlled main lane facility for segment 4. Now the big question for me is, with Loop 9, will that become part of George Bush in phases 3 and 4? I think that would probably be the best thing to do, as, well, Loop 9 is now being constructed at the moment. I mean, you've got phase 1 of segment B that's been completed and built. I don't remember if it's open or not. I don't go that far south, so I don't know. Phase 2 is probably going to start probably within the next 2 or 3 years for segment B. Segment A, probably about a year or so before they start building out phase 1. And then I think they're waiting on segment C. In my opinion, I think they're gonna wait until probably 26 to build that out, because number one, they are building out, I mean, on a lot of pretty rural area, but you are also having to look at going through a good portion of the Trinity River, as well as for both floodplains. I mean, even here too, it's gonna come up here to Seagoville. I believe that's what's over here is Seagoville, and then it's gonna connect back up to I-20, wherever George Bush connects up. And I would like to see, I think segment C, they're gonna wait until George Bush finalizes the East branch, and then once that's done, then they'll start probably finalizing plans for the first set of frontage roads on there. But with that, we're going to end the video right here, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video over Loop 9. This one has been one of the few that has been in the works for, I would say, good 3 years. So I'm kind of glad that we've got this one down. If you guys liked what you saw, please leave a like and subscribe down below. Make sure you guys hit that bell icon so you don't miss any of our future content, whether it's more aviation content, more automotive content like this, or any of our mountain bike content. I believe in the next couple weeks, we're going to, I believe in 2 weeks. So once the new year starts, we're going to be coming back to more of these projects, partially because I do need to finish out the rest of the toll roads and their scripts. But also, I do have some very special stuff coming out if you guys haven't seen the announcement. So I'm going to get that stuff done so for you guys to have it done. Again, I hope you guys have a great day. Merry Christmas. I'll see y'all later. Peace.